Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron. Instant match reaction, Everton 0, Arsenal 1 at Goodison Park today. As you can tell, I'm not at home, I'm not at the game. That's because, well, Sky decided to change the game 2 weeks before kickoff. So unfortunately, we had other arrangements and we couldn't be there today. Yeah, a frustrating result again, a frustrating performance. I think in isolation, this is one of those games that you maybe look at towards the end of the season and think, we lost to a very good Arsenal team, an Arsenal team that ultimately will go and fight for, the title this season. Whether or not they win it is a completely different question, but they'll definitely be in the race. They've strengthened massively in the summer. They're a very good side, and when you come up against very good sides, you have to be absolutely faultless if you want to get anything out of those games, especially when you're a side like Everton who are low on confidence. Results haven't been great, performances haven't been great. You need everything to go your way, and today that wasn't the case. I actually thought we defended quite well throughout the game, but two things that were glaringly obvious was, one, if you were going to adopt the game plan and the tactic of allow them to have all of the ball and defend for 90 minutes, then the simple fact of the matter is you cannot afford to have any lapses of concentration, any at all, if you're coming up against teams like Arsenal, Manchester City, who have got quality in abundance within their squad, and you're going to allow them the ball and you're going to sit back and you're going to defend. Then you can't afford to be having moments in the game where you're asleep or you're not concentrating. And we had one of them today, and we were made to pay for it. You'll come up against teams in this league where you may be able to have one or two lapses of concentration and you'll get away with it, but against sides like Arsenal with the quality they've got, you simply can't. And for some reason we allowed Saka, who is one of the best players in the world at the moment, all of the time, and freedom in the box to pick out his pass, and it's a good finish by Trossard, but ultimately it should never have got to that. And the second thing is a glaringly obvious lack of anything up front, and by anything I mean any quality, any creativity. I felt a little bit sorry for Beto today. I felt a little bit sorry for Dominic Calvert-Lewin when they come on as well. And in a way, there'll be a lot of people today that'll be pointing the fingers at the players themselves, Dwight McNeil, Danjuma, Beto, but the fingers have to be pointed at the manager for me. If you're going to set up with a tactic of we'll defend, then you are either A, accepting that this is a game you aren't going to win, which is a negative mentality to start with in the first place, or B, you're accepting the fact that you've got a plan for if we break on the counter-attack, or if we get an opportunity, there's something in place there to make sure that we make the most of that opportunity. There wasn't any of that today, and don't get me wrong, Everton didn't have a load of the ball going forward. We barely had a touch of the ball. Everything Beto had was scraps, and he was trying to make things happen, and he was trying to put himself about, but it just wasn't working for him. Similar with Danjuma and McNeil, but it was quite clear that there was no plan going forward. There was no game plan, there was no tactic, there was no instruction for when those forwards got the ball, because every time they got the ball, they looked surprised that they had it, and within 5 seconds they'd had it taken off them. For me, these aren't the types of games that particularly frustrate me. I'm old enough and wise enough to understand that Everton Football Club are nowhere near as good of a football team as Arsenal are. And even though it was at Goodison, and even though historically we've got a really good record against them at Goodison, as I said, a lot of those games have been games where Everton have been perfect, and we've got a goal from a corner, or we've got a goal from a little bit of lucky play. That record was always going to be broken, and ultimately, like I said, towards the back end of last season, we lost to Manchester United at Old Trafford, for example, and in isolation, you might look at that game, and I'm not saying you're happy about it or you're not bothered, because we're all fuming and disappointed and upset when Everton lose a game of football, but we're grown up enough to look and go, do you know what, they're just a much better team, and they were much better than us today. This, for me, further highlights the frustrations and disappointments of the Fulham and the Wolves result. And I don't think Sean Dyche should be coming under a huge amount of criticism or a huge amount of, negative press for losing a game of football to Arsenal, 1-0 against a really good side. I think he should be coming up against a lot of negative, press and a lot of criticism because of those defeats to the likes of Fulham and Wolves at Goodison Park. Teams that just simply aren't very good football teams whatsoever. Games that Everton dominated and have lost both of them. So I don't sit there and watch us lose to Arsenal and go, oh my God, what a disgrace, blah, blah, blah. I look at it and go, well, if we'd beaten Wolves and Fulham and we'd be sat here on 7 points, you'd be looking going, do you know what, we played Arsenal at home, there it is what it is, move on to next week. But we can't do that, because we're sat in the relegation zone. We've taken 1 point out of 5 games now in the Premier League, and that's 3 straight home defeats on the bounce, 3 straight 1-0 defeats, and only one of them has been against a team that are half decent. And I don't care what anybody says, and I really couldn't care if it's disrespectful or it upsets people. Wolves are shite and Fulham are shite, and we lost both of those games in circumstances we should not have lost. Today, again, anomaly, one-off. In isolation, these results, ultimately aren't the end of the world. There'll be a lot of teams that lose to Arsenal this season, but it's not in isolation when it's Everton. It's in a collective, and in the collective, it's another defeat. It's more pressure mounted on the manager. For me, I said it on Twitter before, the manager's got 2 home games now that he simply has to win both of, or I think he will lose his job, and rightly so. And I don't care about how much of an XG we had against Fulham and Wolves. I don't care about how good we've looked. I don't care about how he wears a suit and how good he sounds, and we couldn't get better. Ultimately, we'll have come up against 5 teams at Goodison Park by the time that game against Bournemouth finishes, and only one of them will have been a team that you would sit back and go, do you know what, they're a very good side. We've lost that game. It is what it is. We move on. The others, Wolves, Fulham, Luton, and Bournemouth. Everton should be winning 4 of those games comfortably. And if we don't win the next 2 home games, Brentford next week, again, one of them, an away game, we know we're terrible away. If we can get a point, then it's probably a decent point, similar to the Sheffield United. Brentford obviously had a much better team than Sheffield United, but those 2 games at home that follow, Luton and Bournemouth, are huge for this manager. And I'm sorry, but if he loses either one of those games, or if he doesn't come away from both of those games with 6 points, then I just don't see how he is the Everton manager come the turn of Christmas. I really, really don't, because football is a results business. It's not about lovely people. It's not about, he's sound, he walks the length of the training pitch at Finch Farm to make sure that it's, it's long enough, or he gets the players that match fit, the dice fit, etc., etc. It's all a load of nonsense. The reality of the situation is, as a Premier League manager, you're judged on results, and he won't be judged on losing 1-0 to an Arsenal team today who are very good. You'll be judged on losing those games against Fulham and Wolves, and rightly so. And it further emphasises the importance of those 2 home games coming up in the next few weeks or so, and Everton simply have got to win both of those games. We're 5 games in now, we haven't won a game of football, and as I said, Arsenal are the only decent team we've come up against. Okay, you could argue Villa away from home as well. 3 games that Everton should have been taking at least 6 or 7 points from, and we've got 1 point from them. It's simply not good enough, and like I said, you can talk all you like about how good Arsenal are and how difficult this game was going to be. And I thought defensively we done well for the majority of the game. I thought Mykolenko was fairly solid. Again, the goal, you can pick things apart with the goal, and I'm sure we'll sit there over the coming days and say, he was at fault. The fact that Saka was left on his own in the box is criminal for a start. But I thought generally the defence today, Mykolenko, Branthwaite, couple of murmurs, couple of little moments, but I thought they were, generally quite solid against really good attackers. Tarkowski was okay as well. I don't think he was great, but he was okay. But ultimately, like I said, you can't afford to have those lapses of concentration, and we've had one today and we've conceded from it. And if you haven't got a game plan going forward, and you haven't got an idea going forward, then it's even more emphasised. If you've got an idea going forward and you look sharp on the counter-attack and you look like you can create chances, then maybe you'll get away with one lapse of concentration because you might go and get an equaliser. But we didn't have that. I'd love to sit down with Sean Dyche today, and I doubt there's anybody watching this that will have an opportunity to talk to the manager over the next 24 hours. But if you do, and if you are watching, please just say, what was the plan going forward today? We know the game plan was to sit back, defend for 90 minutes and let them have the ball. But you can't go into a Premier League game of football with no plan going forward, no plan for if you get an opportunity, no plan for if you can hit on the counter, because we did have a couple of moments in this game where we were able to hit on the counter-attack, we were able to get forward, we were able to burst into a little bit of space, we put a little bit of pressure on. I think the effort today was called into question. That last 10 minutes, there was a couple of moments where Arsenal looked leggy. Gabriel was on his arse for the last 10 minutes. He couldn't stand, he couldn't walk, he couldn't move. And we didn't put any pressure on him. We were walking players that had just come off the bench. James Garner walking around, not really putting much pressure on. Thought the midfield were atrocious again today. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I have massive concerns about Everton's midfield. I really, really do. Because whilst individually they might look great, whilst Onana individually might be a lovely footballer, 6'8", all the attributes, while Garner might be, he's a sweeper, he picks the ball up, he thingies it, blah, 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 Decore, gets forward. As a trio, they don't work. It's as simple as that. They do not work as a trio. And I'm not judging this based on playing a very good Arsenal team. I'm judging it based on the 4 games we've watched prior. They do not influence games of football. Garner Gay was atrocious today. He really, really was. Onana was, again, invisible for the majority of the game, not in it. Doucouré, in parts, was involved, but not anywhere near as enough as they should be. And there is a gaping hole in this Everton side, and it is that midfield. It's filled with bodies that you almost watch a game and you think, are you just there to fill a space? Have you got no real role? Have you got no real responsibility? Are you not able to play as a team? Are you not able to link the play? Because there was no link today. All as it was the defence defending, lumping it up to the attackers, and because there was no game plan and there was no quality up front, they weren't able to do anything. Danjuma was working off scraps, McNeil the same, Beto the same, Donwenny come on the same. But the midfield are almost just walking around again without any real responsibility. I'd love to sit down with the three of them and go, you must watch your performances after games and think, what am I doing here? I'm not involved. I'm not getting involved. I'm not doing enough. Onana, Garner, Gay, James Garner, Doucouré. I don't care when anybody says, and people will argue and disagree with me, they do not do enough. It's as simple as that. They're not dominant enough. They're not controlling enough. They don't take games by the scruff of the neck. They don't get involved in goals enough. Defensively, they're not good enough cover. So what are they doing? We might love them and you might say, oh, but they're tardy on the ball, but off the ball, what are they doing? Where's the movement? Where's the tracking of men? There's been multiple times today where Arsenal players were allowed to just walk through the midfield. Zinchenko done it a couple of times, just waltzed himself through. Sosa, when he come on, waltzed himself through. Nobody getting at them, nobody attacking them, nobody on the toes. Like I said, their goal come from Saka being given loads of space to pick a pass. Why isn't somebody running with him? Why are we always 30 seconds behind the play? Why? It's almost like, and it's not almost like, this is the case. We stand and watch. These Everton players stand and watch, and they don't act until it's reacting. They don't proactively move. They don't go, right, okay, he's not on the ball now, but I'm going to go and get to him because he might be on the ball in a minute, and then that might create a chance. And then you go over, all of a sudden, Saka doesn't get the ball, they don't score. They wait. They go, oh shit, Saka's got the ball now, I'll go at him. And by the time they've made that move, it's too late. And a goal's been scored, or it's all reactive. And again, listen, these players aren't the greatest footballers in the world. We know that. You don't need to tell me that. We know that these aren't the greatest footballers in the world. And we know that they're nowhere near as at the level of what Arsenal Football Club are. And it's not about this game in itself today. It's about the wider problem. And the wider problem is we've not just watched Arsenal rip us to bits and quicker than us and better than us in the midfield because they're a better team. We've watched other teams this season do that. We've watched other teams over the last 12 months who have been able to have all the time in the world, all the space in the world to pick a pass because our players are standing there. And responsibility goes on the players, but responsibility also has to go on the manager. The manager, listen, you can disagree with me all you like. I don't particularly care. The manager's put himself in a position now where if he doesn't win the next two home games, he'll lose his job, and rightly so. Because it's a results business, and Everton haven't won a game of football so far this season, and I've got no hope that we'll win next week against Brentford because, well, firstly, Brentford are a decent side, secondly, we don't win away, and you've got two games coming up there against teams that you should be beating at Goodison, and if you don't win those games, then there will be uproar, and rightly so, because, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful manner, but if you can't beat Wolves, Fulham, Bournemouth and Luton at Goodison, then who are you going to beat at Goodison? You clearly can't beat the teams like Arsenal, who historically we've got good results against. So, we can't have that thing now of, but we always do well against Arsenal at Goodison, but because we've lost today. We might say, we always do well against Chelsea Goodison, but if we lose that one, nobody will be surprised because these are better teams. It's the teams that we should be beating at Goodison that we're not beating that forms the bigger issue. This instant match reaction would have probably been 2 minutes long if Everton had beat Wolves and Fulham. I'd have sat here and gone, do you know what? Unlucky, defended well, they're a better team. We lost, oh well, we move on to next week. But we're sitting here, we've won the games we expected to win. We've lost the one that we probably didn't expect to win. Oh well, move on. But the worry and the upset and the frustration comes from, but, are we going to win those winnable games next week or in a couple of weeks that ultimately we haven't done so far this season? He's got big questions to answer, Sean Dyche, and he can't hide behind this thing of, well, I kept Everton up and, it's not my fault, etc., etc. It is your fault. You're the manager of this football club and you take responsibility. And I think I said this exact sentence after we lost to Man United towards the back end of last season. And I can't remember who we'd lost to, but we'd lost to someone terrible at Goodison before it. And I sat there and I said, it's not about today. It's not about losing to Man United at Old Trafford. We do that every year. It is what it is. It's about losing those games against poor teams at Goodison that we should be beating. And that's why we're in the relegation zone at the end of the year, by the way, or that's why we're in a relegation battle at the end of the year. It's not because we lose to Arsenal. It's not because we lose to Man United. It's because we lose to poor teams at home that we should be beating. the way Everton stayed away from relegation this season, and I genuinely did think going into the season that Dyche would bring this, as he would bring the good results against the teams we expect to beat. And okay, we might lose some of the games that against the bigger teams, fine, whatever, but we'll win those home games against the teams we expect to beat. But we're not even doing that now, so what's he doing then? If Sean Dyche isn't doing that, name me the positives that he's doing. I'd love for somebody to give me a comment about what positives Sean Dyche is doing to this team at the moment, because I just don't see it. I really, really don't see it. Tell me, you can tell me all you like that we had 153 XG against Fulham. We had 74 chances created. We didn't score and we lost the game. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. Anyway, look, I'm going to leave it because I'm going to see Busted, because that was my original plan today and I'm not going to let that ruin my day. I'll have the player ratings out tomorrow because I need to get ready. But yeah, let us know your thoughts. Like I said, frustrating. I do think there was maybe a lack of effort. There was definitely a lack of a game plan, certainly going forward by the manager. And it puts further pressure on him and the players now for the next few fixtures, that we simply need to start winning games of football. You know, I think we might come out of that. I think that that Bournemouth game would be midway through October. The next game then is the Merseyside derby at Anfield, I believe. So that's pretty much a write-off anyway. So we could be coming to a point where we're at the end of October and we've not won a Premier League game if we don't win those 2 home games. And the manager will be sacked if that's the case. So it is what it is. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you've enjoyed it, leave a like, subscribe if you're new. And yeah, we'll see you after.